was pulled out of my car. I was tossed around. Are you kidding me? I remember walking into the precinct and another officer looked at me. He says, "You're not supposed to be here." So that's when I knew something was wrong.
KVUE Defender and Austin American-Statesman reporter Tony Plohetski uncovered this video and broke the story online within the past hour. He joins us now live at APD headquarters. And Tony, this all started with speeding.
Chris and Terry, that teacher was going 15 miles over the speed limit on Riverside Drive in East Austin. Now, this happened in June 2015, but tonight this case is getting new scrutiny, in part because of our questions about what happened and how it was handled inside the walls of APD.
For Breon King, shock and despair still 1 year after her experience with an Austin police officer.
I've become afraid of the people who are supposed to protect me and to take care of me.
That fear, she said, came from a clash with Officer Brian Richter.
Is your driver's license? You're being stopped for speeding.
What happened is caught on his patrol car video, obtained exclusively by the KVUE Defenders and the Austin American-Statesman. Officer Richter says in this report that he asked King to close her car door should she try to run away.
All right, take a seat back in your car so we can close the door. Put your feet back in the car so I can close the door.
When she didn't immediately comply, he attempts to forcibly remove her, and things escalate fast.
No, why are you touching me? Oh my God!
As their confrontation plays out, King is taken to the ground a second time. In his report, Officer Richter says he acted so quickly because King reached to the passenger side of the car. He says he didn't know if she had a weapon. He also said King showed what he called a, quote, uncooperative attitude and resisted by clutching her steering wheel, actions not caught on camera. King was charged with resisting arrest, a charge prosecutors immediately dismissed when they saw this video.
I was trying to figure out why is this happening to me. Oh my God. I was genuinely fearful for my life. I didn't know what was going to happen. And literally, I didn't understand why it was happening to me.
But it doesn't end there. A few minutes later, on her way to jail, a calmer King talks to another APD officer, Patrick Spradlin, about relations between officers and the black community.
Because of their appearance and whatnot?
Officer Spradlin is heard offering possible explanations about why some people fear African Americans.
I can give you a really good idea why it might be that way. Violent tendencies. And I want you to think about that. That's why a lot of the white people are afraid, and I don't blame them. Yeah. Some of them, because of their appearance and whatnot, some of them are very intimidating.
After more than a year, the entire case is getting a new look. At the time, Officer Richter received the lowest level of discipline, counseling and training. But now, Police Chief Art Acevedo said the department is doing a full review, both of Officer Richter's use of force and Officer Spradlin's comments. The chief says he found those particularly offensive.
I can tell you that those comments are not consistent with the expectations, the mindset. I think the mindset that we want of our folks or anybody in law enforcement.
I was in disbelief. I was.
King says she wants something done.
If you've wronged someone and you have not been reprimanded, then how do you know that you're wrong?
For her, she said the clash between her and Officer Richter has forever tarnished how she views the police.
Now, we have put much more of this raw video on our website, kvue.com. And just within the past several hours, we've learned that Police Chief Art Acevedo has been meeting with black community leaders, informing them of this situation and asking them to help the community remain calm. And Chris and Terry, in just a few minutes, we are also supposed to hear from the police chief as he addresses the media at large. We will carry that on KVUE News. Reporting live at APD headquarters, Tony Plohetski, KVUE News.
Austin Police Chief Art Acevedo secretly recorded going off on his highest-ranking officers. The 1-hour tape exposes tension between the chief and top commanders. The recording was leaked to Tony Plohetski. He is in the studio now with what the chief had to say. Tony?
Well, Terry, we never get to hear what goes on behind closed doors between the chief and the top brass, but this audio tape takes us inside that meeting room. The chief is raw and emotional, sometimes even using profanity. And he delivers a strong message aimed, he says, at a few of his lower performing commanders. He thinks the department is sliding backwards, and he is not going to stand for it. Inside the walls of APD, a meeting at the highest levels. Police Chief Art Acevedo and his more than a dozen commanders. He tells them that it's time to step up or step aside.
I have given 9 years of my life to the Austin Police Department. I don't care if you like me. I don't care if you don't like me, if you like me. I don't really care. But I give a about our men and women. I care about our organization, and most importantly, I care about this profession.
We have team coverage of the investigation tonight.
Chief Acevedo's gut-level thrashing in August came after the KVUE defenders first revealed this video showing the violent arrest of teacher Breon King.
Oh my God!
Officer Brian Richter's supervisors had seen it and only reprimanded Officer Richter. The chief is livid. He only learned about the case from us.
That was a horrific video, and if you don't look at that video and are horrified by what you saw, shame on you. Had that been a pretty white girl in her Sunday best dress, I don't think that Richter would have responded. She wasn't going with the program. Who gives a You know what? Millennials ask questions. Get over it. If you're going to order somebody to do something, you better have a damn good reason you're going to take them to jail. What was the overwhelming need for him to have her feet bar?
The chief also addresses backlash he says he felt, even from some of his top officers, in another high-profile case this year.
Stop right there, man. Stop right there.
He fired Officer Jeffrey Freeman in the shooting of David Joseph, a naked, unarmed teen, an incident seen on this patrol car video.
Stop, stop, stop.
But Chief Acevedo says he knows many didn't back him.
You know, the union got all pissed off because I fired Freeman. Some of you might have gotten pissed off. I'm telling you right now, we have another Freeman tomorrow. Guess what's going to happen? I didn't lose a minute of sleep. If you can't handle a 19-year-old kid, broad daylight, naked, and your first instinct to come out with your gun, and your next instinct is to shoot the kid dead, you don't need to be a cop. I don't give a how nice you are.
These recordings show more than just a police chief blowing off steam. Some in the community say it also highlights friction between the chief and at least some of his commanders. And that's an issue they say they fear could slow the department's progress. Ken Cassidy is the Austin Police Union president.
I don't think it was taken very well. I think that Chief expressed his feelings about the Breon King case, which I think that's totally justified. But when you add on, I don't give a bleep bleep about your morale or how you feel. That's inappropriate.
Nelson Linder, president of the Austin NAACP, says that although many trust the chief to do the right thing, they fear he doesn't have the buy-in of his commanders. That's how situations like King's arrest escape scrutiny.
It's just not there. We've had too many mistakes lately that are just bad for the entire community, and that's a concern. That's a concern.
The chief himself seems to fear that too.
We have got to understand that we are here to do heavy lifting. And if the lift is too heavy, you all need to start thinking about doing something else.
So why tape the police chief? Well, the source who provided the audio says he wanted to highlight what he considers an issue in the working relationship between the chief and some commanders. The chief tells me this week he is disappointed that the source didn't talk to him in person, but he points out that what he has said in public about those two big cases is exactly the same thing as what he told his commanders, Terry, in private.
So was the chief upset that he had been taped?
Well, he certainly was not pleased. I mean, we are talking about a group of 18 commanders who are really the inside team, the inside staff. So the idea that one of them apparently taped him and then released that audio was very concerning and upsetting, as you can imagine, to the police chief.
And about showing division, too. Probably.
Absolutely,
okay.
yeah.
Tony, we appreciate it.
You bet.
Dangling from a parking garage 8 stories high. Tonight, that survivor is opening up for the first time in a joint KVUE Defenders Austin American-Statesman exclusive. Tony Plohetski is here with his gripping account of what happened that day.
Terry, his name is William O'Connor, and he's like many 20-somethings. He moved to Austin to work in tech. He actually graduated from SMU just a few months ago. So I talked to him for several hours last night, and we actually went back to the parking garage. It's the first time he's been there since this all happened. He genuinely believes he defied death and talked about the hero who saved him and what he's calling a second chance.
You know that you're about to die.
What happened on a Friday 2 weeks ago tomorrow made people downtown freeze in disbelief and look to the sky.
Austin emergency crews are trying to get a car down that is dangling from a parking garage.
A car no one would ever want to be in, just barely hanging on. Now we know it was this man, 23-year-old app developer William O'Connor, inside that silver SUV. An afternoon trip to the gym that almost killed him.
I don't know exactly what happened. I mean, it happened fast. That's all I know. But the car accelerated, and I went over the parking block and through the metal cables and over the edge.
O'Connor says he hadn't been drinking and doesn't do drugs. He wasn't texting or talking on the phone.
So I feel like whenever I describe it, the words that I'm using are so inadequate to describe just like the sheer terror.
The next thing he knows, he's hanging on, literally, by thin steel cable, the remnants of what happened still there. He realizes he is hanging in the sky and yells at the top of his lungs.
It was like pure animalistic, instinctual response to terror. I didn't know how stable the hold was, you know?
Then, as he's screaming for help, he sees a man who would soon save his life. A man named Zach, who was staying at a nearby youth hostel.
He grabs one of my hands and tells me to swing both of my feet up at the same time. So I kind of just like curled my feet up and swung them out my window and put both of them on the floor. And then he just kind of like pulled me up, like when you're helping somebody out that's sitting on the ground.
Someone snaps this photo of the two minutes later.
He's amazing. He's a hero. I don't know how to adequately thank him.
By the time O'Connor was down, crowds had formed on the street watching a scene unfold that's more like something from a movie.
I couldn't believe it when I got out of the stairs and saw the hundreds of people that had gathered around in like the 2 minutes or whatever it had been. So many people and cameras.
O'Connor had never been back to the parking garage until right now.
I can't believe it.
What do you think?
It's incredible. I'm speechless. I don't know what to say. That is, wow.
O'Connor says friends and family tell him it's a miracle he wasn't hurt, that he wasn't killed.
You know, I was talking to my roommate once I got back, and he was like, dude, so what are you gonna do now? Like, now that you've had this like crazy experience and you're doing this like second take on life. The biggest difference between then and now is the types of things that will register as important or stressful. And I think it just like, I mean, whether it's like more accurate or less, it like recalibrated my perception.
He says he thinks he will forever look at life differently. A life that just a few days ago hung in the balance. At first, O'Connor says he didn't want to be known and needed time to process what happened. Even people who knew him didn't know he was the man hanging 8 stories up in the SUV. But just this week, he said he started telling people. He says that he hopes that by telling his story, it will help bring closure for him and everyone who wanted to know what happened that day. Tony Plohetski, KVUE News Nightbeat.
Now to a KVUE Defenders exclusive. An assistant Austin police chief clocked at 92 miles an hour on Mopac in his city car with his young son, drives away with only a warning. Tonight, that official is the subject of an internal investigation and has gotten a costly ticket, but only after we started asking questions. Tony Plohetski is live at APD headquarters tonight with the story. Tony?
Hey, Terry. Well, you know, we posted this story about an hour ago on our website, and within that time, people are already asking questions about how all of this went down. And as you said, Assistant Police Chief Chris McIlvaine was driving 92 in a 65-mile-an-hour zone on Mopac. This happened recently on Mopac, and he was driving an unmarked SUV while off duty on his way to Waco to a basketball game. He says he is just like everyone else. He didn't realize he was speeding until he looked in his rearview mirror and saw a police officer behind him. But unlike me and you, who almost certainly would have gotten a ticket, he drove away with a written warning.
If it looks like this APD officer is racing along Mopac, you're right, he is.
Still flying.
He has to, in order to catch the guy in the car ahead of him.
I think that 92 is excessive for that roadway, significantly excessive.
As the driver of the SUV pulls over, Officer David Montalvo keys in his license plate and realizes it's a city car.
Who is this, dude?
He soon learns it's Assistant Police Chief Chris McIlvaine, the top cop overseeing the department's professional standards and internal affairs. His job is to make sure everyone follows the rules. Officer Montalvo and Chief McIlvaine talk a total of 27 seconds.
How fast was I going? Well, the first reading was 92 and it locked in at 88. Holy mackerel. That's the only reason I chased you. Sorry. Y'all be safe. We're heading up to Waco for the KU game. Oh, that'll be fun. I apologize. All right, take care, buddy.
Interim Police Chief Brian Manley didn't know until last week after we started asking about what happened that morning.
I expect the officer of this department to comply with the law, whether it be criminal or traffic law, just like we expect the citizens to.
After we told him, he then opened an internal affairs investigation.
The police monitor was brought into the discussion, and that investigation is concluded.
Chief Manley says state law prevents him from disclosing any punishment, but he adds that APD officers must be mindful when they stop a fellow officer for speeding. Even if it's their boss, sometimes you have to write the ticket. Chief McIlvaine said in a statement today, quote, "At the time of the traffic stop, I believed I was in the area of Mopac where the speed limit was 75. I was mistaken and have received a citation for the violation."
Now, Chief McIlvaine will have to pay about $195 for that ticket. A couple of important things to note. I asked Chief Manley about the fact that Chief McIlvaine was driving his city car to Waco. He says that he is on call 24/7 as an assistant police chief, and so therefore he can take his car that distance with him. Now, the police chief, the interim police chief Manley, is scheduling a news conference that's going to start in about 10 minutes. We will have full details on KVUE News at 6. Reporting live from APD headquarters, Tony Plohetski, KVUE News.
KVUE Defenders Austin American Statesman joint exclusive tonight. An Austin officer who shot and killed a naked, unarmed teen is pointing a finger at Police Chief Art Acevedo, saying the chief caved to politics when he fired him. Officer Jeffrey Freeman is now trying to get his job back, and we're hearing from him for the first time. Tony Plohetski is the only reporter to get a copy of a videotaped interview with Officer Freeman. He's in the newsroom now live. Tony?
Well, Terry, as we told you at 5 and 6 tonight, this interview spans a wide range of topics. It's 4 hours long. It's the first time we're hearing Officer Freeman's side of the story 9 months since the shooting. He talks about why he believes he would still be on the force had protesters not called for his job.
I'm not going up there just to try to shoot him down.
But that's what you did.
When he charged at me, yes, I defended myself.
That's former APD officer Jeffrey Freeman talking about the morning of February 8th, the morning he shot and killed 17-year-old David Joseph, naked and without a weapon in a North Austin neighborhood. In a recent interview as part of a lawsuit against him by the Joseph family, Officer Freeman says he'll live with what happened forever.
I wouldn't wish this on anybody, not even my worst enemy.
What happened ended his career after 11 years as an Austin cop.
I think I was fired because of political reasons.
Impartial investigation.
In the days after the shooting, Chief Art Acevedo, standing with community leaders from groups like Black Lives Matters and NAACP, questioned what happened.
No justice, no peace.
And there were protests outside City Hall.
Chief Acevedo had an agenda. He decided that in order to meet the agenda with the current political status of what's going on right now in the country, he felt that that's the move that he needed to do, and he fired me based on opinions because of the heat that was on his back from everybody else. All the protesters, you know, Black Lives Matter, from you know, all those folks like that, and that's the side he chose.
Chief Acevedo says Officer Freeman shouldn't have shot and could have used weapons like a taser or stun gun that could have saved David Joseph's life. The chief put it more bluntly in a recently recorded meeting with his commanders.
If you can't handle a 19-year-old kid, broad daylight, naked, and your first instinct to come out with your gun, and your next instinct is to shoot the kid dead, you don't need to be a cop.
Now, we got this video at an important time in the case. Officer Freeman is fighting for his job back and has a big hearing next month before an independent arbitrator. That arbitrator will decide whether to put him back on the street. And Terry, we've been talking all night about this video, but there's still so much more.